Alright, you bastards, this is Some-Belgian-prepper, and today I want to talk about something that a lot of preppers fear and a lot of beginning preppers make a mistake with. But before we start with this subject, if you're interested in detective stories, there will be a link in the description about my first book called Bloody Crosses. It's in Dutch, so if you're interested, take a look. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about what to do with expired food. Yeah, first of all, I would say try to avoid that your food will expire because, yeah, rotate your rotate or find a way to to rotate your food. Like find a system where you always the first things that you will take are the things that are first to perish in the near future. But what you also can do is just take a look, take an inventory, make some notes about how much food do you have, what kind of food do you have, and when that food is going to expire, and make a system where you can check these things very easily. What I do is um, usually there are very small signs where the expire date is, but what I try to do is in big alcoholic stift. How do you say this? In markers, I try to write the expired date in a big. So from the moment I go through my pantry, I can just look. Ah, it's that date when it's finally expired. But yeah, it's also handy when you stack it in such ways that this date is from far visible, that you don't always have to take and look through three. There are usually, if you can perhaps see, in the laser tag there are three sentences with certain dates, and one of them is the expire date, but I find it easier to do it like this. So what to do if it expires? First of all, check every 6 months, I would say, your pantry. And that is something I did, if you perhaps can see. This is actually the food that is actually have been expired. But there is a thing with expired food, and that is expired food does not mean that it really has been expired. I made a video about how to see that food is safe, and the basic things are just even when the expired date is done, there are still you got still some time before it goes bad, because these expiring dates are something that the producers of this food will take in account, that they will have much more time, so nobody can get sick and sue them. So they will take more. They will put their expire date lower than it actually is. The second thing is watch if nothing is broken about the seal of this food, these kind of food products like these cans. Like there is no rust that has gone too deep. There is no dents. There are nothing that can and makes oxygen come in contact with the contents of these kind of cans. So, and if the cans is a little bit bloated, so when this is flat, usually it's good, and when it starts to get a little bit bubbly, when it starts to get a little bit bloated, that means the bacteria are growing in here and that it's bad. So, but you can see this all in my video on how to how to recognize expired food and some truths and myths about it. So, yeah, this is still edible. It's only off by a month. All these things, but I would say try to avoid this kind of things in the first place. I've bought this food a long time ago, but what happens? I grow my own food. I got meat from my animals. I got my eggs, and yeah, I don't have the need for much of these vegetables, because the vegetables that I don't grow, I usually get fresh from the stores, and sometimes I took one of these cans. But if you buy a lot of cans, there's a lot of things that you won't use, especially when you use it for an emergency pantry. Yeah, so I would say try to get some cans, but don't make a whole pantry of cans, because canned food is it's not really the healthiest things and not the most appetizing, but contrary to fresh food. But I would say be careful with it, be a little bit balanced in it. So I'm going to step away a little bit from canned goods, because these are things that I probably will be less eating in a everyday situation. But when the time arises, it's still edible. But what to do if your food is expired? There are several things you can do. The food that is still in here, I had two categories: the food that is still good for a few years, and the food that I need to watch for. So those are stored in easy access, so I can directly see when to use it within 1 month or 2 months. The another thing you can do is, if your food is almost expired, but you are certain that you will not be eating from it, because you grow your own garden or you have your own meat from your animals or whatever reason there is. If you have too much food and it's almost going to expire, give it to the food bank, and they will probably give it to people who really need it and will use it within a week if you deliver it. Because at this moment in time, the food banks are having shortages of food. But yeah, I think the chance is high that they will throw it away, because by law they cannot give almost expired food to these poor people. So yeah, that's something that could be a little bit annoying, but it's something good to do if you don't have the next thing. The next thing I would say is give it to your chickens. These all this food, I know it's so a little bit waste of money, but don't let it go to waste, and give your expired foods to your chickens. They will be happy with it. But I want to warn you about something. If you, like me, did a whole spring cleanup from all these cans that you still have left, be carefully, because a lot of these cans contain pickle brine or salt, a lot of salt or oils. And I would say give it to your chickens or animals, whatever, in small portions. Why? Because if you say, "Oh, I won't give my chickens grain today because I will give a few cans of these and pour it at them and they will eat it." If you give something that contains a lot of salt or fats or oils or whatever, that could be bad for the chickens to process it, because it's processed food. And if it's really salty, if you give a lot of salty food at once and the chickens will eat it, it could give some kidney trouble or some liver damage. Or if you just give in one big hit or a few big hits, because if you have a lot of cans and you give it a few days in a row, that could be problematic for the chickens to digest it or give some negative health problems. So what I always do is I give them the grain or the chicken food, and I throw 1 or 2 cans for all my chickens, and I repeat it every 2 days in that way. So they will have their time to process all this processed food through their bodies, so they won't get sick or get negative health consequences about it. What I also want to warn you for is, don't put this in your compost. It's like I said, it's a lot of these processed or canned foods. These contain a lot of salt and oils. You do not want to put oils and salt onto your compost, because that will be detrimental for your next gardening session if you're going to use compost for that. So, like I said, give it to the chickens or give it to the food bank, or in a worst case scenario, put it in a place where it cannot contaminate with the salt or oil your plants or your animals, and let the wild birds eat it. uh, because yeah, those are just wild birds. Or you can use it as a sort of bait for your for hunting birds. Like I said this in a video on how to get meat in a bug-in scenario. If you put some of these expired foods onto a tray for birds, and you keep doing this daily, birds will remember this. They will get to it, and when you have a little bit fancy for some spit roasted bird, uh, bam, you shoot one with your air gun, and you have meat for in exchange for some expired food. So as a bait, it can also be used. And if you're going to throw it away for some reason somewhere else, do it in a place that will not contaminate all the rest and your animals. So yeah, that is something that you can do with your expired food, I would say. And yeah, if you got any other suggestions that you can do with expired food, please let me know. I'm always eager to learn some new things, or how other people will do certain things. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and see you in the next video. Cheers.